1977 it was, and I through Graham Bonnet, doing his self-titled album, I ended up at Tittenhurst Park at John Lennon's house, which had in fact at that point been bought by Ringo, but the setup was still the same, pretty much, I think, as it was when John had owned the house. But the story was that Graham had signed a record deal with Ringo's label, Ringo Records, that was distributed through Polydor. Because Ringo had bought the house in the 70s from John, when John and Yoko moved to New York, he had offered the studio for artists that were signed to his label to go and record there. So we didn't record the whole album there, but we did a number of overdubs there. And I was one of the first. I actually went down to look at the studio. I met with Ringo's studio manager at the time, Mike, and he showed me around. And it had an MCI board, I think, at that point. And we arranged and booked the time, and then Pip Williams was producing, and I was engineering the project. And we went there for, it was probably about a week, I think, maybe a little longer. And I got there first. I was the first to arrive, so I got the pick of the bedrooms. And John and Yoko's room. And the interesting thing about that I always remember, even in 2022 now, was the setup in the bedroom, because on each side of the bed, on the wall, there was a panel, and one side was engraved John, and the other side was engraved Yoko. And they had jack plugs that went down into the studio, so John could sit in bed and play guitar and record, you know. And then there was a whole bank of lights that floodlit the grounds, and the grounds had been landscaped by Capability Brown. And I think when Ringo had bought it, he'd put these huge dinosaurs and T-Rexes throughout the grounds and lit them up, so at night you could put all these lights on and see it was like Jurassic Park, you know. And so it was surreal, you know, being a fan of the Beatles from being a young lad in the early 60s, and then to actually be sleeping in the same room that John and Yoko had been there in the 70s, you know. was pretty weird, I'd tell you. And there was a sauna there that went off the room, so we had the access to the sauna, and we sort of sat up there and recorded a bunch of Graham's vocals there, and did some other overdubs, guitar overdubs and everything. So that was the experience I had of going to it was known at that point as Starling Sound, and I think it was used by a number of other artists as well during that time. But there was a few other things that struck me. Was that John apparently had a Rolls Royce Silver Cloud, I think it was, and got in an accident with it, so he'd had it taken to the breakers yard, and it was crushed into a whole block of steel, and it was set out the back near the pool as an ornament, you know. So you imagine this Rolls Royce was just this little ornament that sat in his garden. And the pool was actually the first time that I'd seen, although it became popular in California, was all black lined pool, you know, so you couldn't really see to the bottom because it was completely black. And I think that Ringo's wife had all the appliances changed, Barbara, and she'd put in all black. That was her theme, was a black kitchen. So that was that was my time at John's original house that was again bought by Ringo, and it was called Tittenhurst Park in Ascot, and it's now owned by a sheik, and so none of it, I believe, it's all been completely gutted and remodeled. But when I was there, the original piano that's featured in the Imagine video was still there in the room, although I understand that wasn't the one that was recorded, but it was the one he did the video playing. So now my history with Graham went back prior to 77, actually into 73, when he was signed to DJM Records, to Dick James Music. And at that time, I'd worked with a producer, A&R manager, Kaplan K, and around 73, 74, we did a number of recordings. Before Graham was with Rainbow, before he was known, as more as a rock singer, he was very much a pop singer, So I'd known him for some time, and we went on and did more albums together, and then with Francis Rossi, I did the Night Games single, which we recorded in Red Bus Studios, and after that, Francis went on tour, and I carried on and recorded the whole lineup album, which we did in many studios throughout London, and recorded down at Rick Parfitt's studio as well. So I had a very long history, as long as I had with Status Quo, actually, with Graham Bonnet. We got on really well together. So that's the story.